What's up YouTube, this is Demkeys back again with another Unity tutorial, and this is going to be a continuation or more a sequel of part 1 of the Unity 4.6 UI tools series. If you have not already watched part 1, I suggest you go back and watch part 1, or well, there's a link in the top left corner of the screen. You can just click that and watch part 1. So on with the tutorial. Today you will be learning about RawImage, slider, scrollbar, navigation, events, and if there is enough time then toggle as well. If we do not have enough time, then I'll cover toggle in the next segment. So we have an empty scene over here. I'm first going to create a canvas. As I mentioned in the previous tutorial, if you do not have a canvas, then as I mentioned in the previous tutorial, a canvas is required if you want to have any UI elements on the screen, because all those UI elements have to be part of some canvas, either one or many, but some canvas. So if you just select, let me delete this, if I just select button, a button is created along with a canvas, and the button is automatically set as a child of the canvas. Now first let's take a look at navigation. I'm going to create a few buttons over here so I can explain navigation properly. Let me change a few things over here. We need to change the highlighted color to red. It'll be more easier to see it that way. And navigation, let's set it to vertical. Using navigation you can control which UI element will be focused next based on which key has been pressed. You have presets, that's horizontal and vertical and automatic, but you can also set explicit, meaning you can select which control can be which control will be focused when either you press up or down or left or right. Let's first take a look at vertical. I'm going to duplicate this button over here. Alright, so I've made 4 copies, and you'll notice arrows going back and forth between the buttons. This is because visualize is selected, checked, well, selected, because the visualize button has been pressed. This basically shows you the map of the map or the navigation, well, yeah, the map. It shows you the map of the buttons or all the UI elements navigation. So basically what this is saying is that you can go from this button to this and this and this, or you can even go from this to this and then back, and well, you get the point. So let's run the game. Before running the game we have to set a certain game object. I seem to be calling these UI objects elements. I'm gonna try not to do that. Okay, so this is our first button. We want to set this as the first selected object. For that you select the event system, and under event system script you can just drag and drop button into first selected. Alright, now I don't think I pointed this out in the previous tutorial, but horizontal axis, vertical axis, submit button, cancel button, all these controls can actually be changed over here, or you can add your, one minute, yeah, here under the input manager you have all these axes over here, and you can change, or you can even create your own and add those to this event system or to this input module. You're not just limited to what is written over here. Alright, so let's continue. Now I have selected button as the first game object to be in focus. Let's play the game and see what happens. So the first button is in focus right now, and so it is being shown as a red color. It's not in focus anymore because I moved the mouse. There. As I press the down arrow key, the selection goes lower and lower, and so the corresponding button is highlighted. This is vertical. All of these buttons have their navigation set to vertical. Now, suppose we have a button over here in this side. We can set this button to horizontal axis. No, sorry, horizontal navigation. It might be better if I wait. Yeah, it might be better if I just do it with these two. Set this to horizontal. Okay, this is good. So these arrows over here have automatically been set because I've selected horizontal. It doesn't move along the vertical axis. The navigation is just horizontal, so it's left and right. I'm gonna set this button as the first selected object and run the game. And now I can select, well, I can't go right, but I can go left. If I set these two as horizontal, then I can go back and forth between both of them. Alright, now let's say you have a button over here. Let's delete this and set this to vertical. Okay, this is already set to vertical. This button is being mapped to the top button, not to this or to this. It's only being mapped to this and this. In such a case, what you can do is set an explicit navigation. Find out which is this button. Okay, and this. Alright. Then drag this into select down and this into select up. So what's gonna happen here is from this button you'll be able to select this and even this, and then you can go further down. You can also set these buttons navigation to explicit, and then so you can actually go back to this middle button. Or let's change that a little bit. Keep it explicit, but make this the button that this button corresponds with or connects with. I'm not sure. This should be left. So there should be nothing on the bottom and nothing on the top. Alright, and we can set this to explicit as well and have this button as the button for select on right. We can also set this button to move back to this button or the button on top by setting select on up. Now let's play the game and see how our navigation works. Oops, I need to set this as the first button. Okay, so we can move down and up, and now we can also move left and right. So you can have any number of combinations with this. This is a very useful tool, especially if you don't want your entire UI to be controlled only by mouse. Next, RawImage. Now in the last tutorial you studied about images. An image is different as compared to a raw image in that images don't have UV rectangle properties. Now it says here X and Y and width and height, but I'm going to tell it to you in simple terms. Just think of it as in a material when you're setting the offset and when you're setting the tiling properties. It has pretty much the same effect. Okay, another difference between image and raw image is images take sprites. Raw images don't take sprites, they take textures. So I'm gonna have to set this as a texture. Let me delete this image and I'll place this raw image at the back so it becomes the background of our UI. I can also attach whatever material I want to it. Let's call this, I don't know, just matte. I'll set it to UGUI default and change the alpha a little bit, make it transparent. Okay, that's good. So now I can drag and drop this material and it's transparent. I can change this property a little bit, make it red or blue. Well, that's not important. Anyways, okay, let me change this to none so I can show you exactly what UV rectangle does. If I change the value of X, it's basically working as an offset. The same as for Y. And if I change W, which is width, that adds tiling. If I change the value of H, more tiling, so you can see all the repetition over here. I'll change this back to 1 and this one as well. You also have the option to set it to its native size, which is quite big. I'm gonna undo that. Next we are gonna take a look at sliders. Let me create a slider and bring it over here. Alright, so let's take a look at some of its properties. You have first interactable. This decides whether the control is enabled or disabled. You have transition, just like buttons and other controls which I showed you in part 1. I'm not going to explain this because it's already explained in part 1. So again, I suggest that you watch part 1 if you haven't already watched it. And you have navigation. You already know what that is. Okay, I don't think I showed you automatic. I showed you horizontal, vertical, and explicit. Before we continue, let me show you automatic. I'm going to select all these and set them to automatic. It makes its own navigation map, and at that point when you run the game, you have different effects. Based on how the controls are laid out, the navigation map might be different. Okay, on with sliders. So that's navigation. Next you have fill rect. Okay, sliders have two children. That's the fill area, which is this. The fill area again has one child, which is fill. That is this object. This is what basically tells you whether the slider is full or empty or whatever. We'll be using this as well. You can use this in cases where you want to use the slider as a health bar, for example. I'll be showing you that shortly. Next, the next child is the handle slide area. That is this entire area, and within that you have handle, which is this. So you have to specify exactly what is the fill rect and what is the handle rect, and that is specified here. That's this and this. Next you have the direction, whether you want the slider to go left to right or right to left or bottom to top or top to bottom. We are going to do left to right. You can set the minimum value and the maximum value and set whether you want the values to change as whole numbers or as decimals. Uh, that depends what kind of effect you're trying to achieve. Of course, if you're just moving between 0 and 1, you don't want whole numbers because that's just going to jump from one point to another. But then again, depends upon what effect you're trying to achieve. And you can also set what value the slider has by default. Alright, now let's make this slider actually do something. First, let's create a script within RawImage and call this, well, let's just call it RawImage script. Okay, that already exists. O1. Alright, now before we start writing the actual code in our script, we first need to write unity dot, no, using unity editor.ui, or is it unity engine? Unity engine dot, yeah, sorry, using unity engine.ui. This is required if you want to be able to use things like slider or image or raw image or what else. Well, you get the point. Without this, you will not be able to use any of these. You see it says slider joint over here, image, and well, raw image script. These are just two scripts. This isn't actually the raw image game object. So yeah. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is create a public raw image and call it img. Next we're going to create a public void function and call it resize. I don't think O1 is necessary, but it's okay. And this function is going to take one parameter, which is of float type, and it's called value. And then we can set image dot dot what? Rect transform dot size delta dot, what am I looking for? X and Y. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna need to set the entire size delta. I cannot set X and Y. So equals new vector 2, and we only want to change the value of X, so that is the basically the width of the image, and we don't want to change this at all, so let's let it remain img.rectTransform.sizeDelta.y. Now we haven't specified which raw image has to be used over here, so for that we have to drag and drop raw image over here. Next, we go back to slider and add an event trigger over here and drag raw image into it. Now because raw image contains that script, so we can access the script over here. You see static parameters and dynamic float. You can actually see resize here and here as well. Now the difference between these two is if I choose resize over here, whatever value is currently selected, or whatever is the value of the slider, that value is going to be used or going to be passed into the function, and that's kind of what we want. Let me undo this and increase the size of this raw image. Okay, now I'm going to copy this. Oops. I'm going to copy this and set it as the max value of our slider. So minimum is 0. I think minimum should be 1. 0 might give an error. It's okay. And maximum is 1050. Now we can select resize from dynamic float, not static parameters. And you can see I cannot enter any parameter values over here even if I wanted to, although our function is actually taking in a parameter because we have selected resize from dynamic float, so the value is going to be automatically passed into the parameter. So let's run the game and see the effect. As you can see, I'm able to resize the raw image with the slider. Alright, I can't really show you how resize works with static parameters. I'm gonna have to show you that with another control. Probably the toggle buttons or toggle controls. It works best with that. Alright, now like I said earlier, you can also use this slider as a health bar. Let's change the fill color to, I don't know, blue, and let's remove this raw image for now. change it to a more lighter blue and set the alpha full. And let's go in the handle slide area and disable the game object completely. Alright, now we can add let's say we can add the script to our camera. You can add it to just about anything because it won't really matter. You'll see now why. Let's call this health bar script. Okay, again we have to add Unity engine dot UI, then create a public slider variable, call it slide, and then in update float h input dot get axis raw horizontal. The difference between get axis and get axis raw is while get axis gradually increases from 0 to either +1 or decreases to -1, when I say gradually I mean 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 like that, but in get axis raw it's either 0 or +1 or -1. It just jumps between these values. It's basically a whole number. So this is going to tell us whether the left or the right key or A or D is being pressed. Next, slide dot value plus equals h. Let's save the script, and also we have to add our slider over here because we'll be accessing the slider's value. Alright, and also let's change, okay, I should remove this, and now change the max value to 5. Change this to whole numbers, and now let's run the game. Well, it's going kind of fast, but you get the point. Also, you can see this navigation taking place here, just ignore that. So yeah, this is how you can use the slider as a health bar as well. Let me delete this. Next we should be looking at scroll bars, but I think I should explain scroll rect and the UI mask before that. Alright, so just go with me right now. I'm going to create a panel, say this big. Within that panel I'm going to create, to create it as a child, just a small tip, right click on the panel itself, and then you can select whatever you want, so it's automatically a child. Okay, any properties I need to set here? Well, I'll set sprite later, but anything else? No, I think I'm good. I'm gonna duplicate this, make 3 copies, and set a different sprite for each image. Now I have a sprite sheet here that I've divided into various sprites. You can use whatever you want as long as it is a sprite. Alright, now let's say uh, this is the part where your player can select his character, or he might want to have a look at the number of characters that he's got, his choices. You don't want to show all of them at once. Maybe you want to show only one at a time, or you want to show it in a small screen, not as an entire panel. This is how you can do it. First of all, you create an empty game object. It should be a part of your canvas, a child of your canvas, and call it scroll view. It is important that you make the panel a child of scroll view in order to get our scrolling effect to work. Move this button over here. I think I can delete it. It's okay. Alright. Now in scroll view, you have to add, first of all, a scroll rect. And okay, let me explain these first. Okay, so if you want to be able to scroll anything, a panel or an image or anything like that, it has to be a part of a scroll rect. And I don't mean you add uh, a scroll rect to that image. I mean you do it like this. You create an empty game object, add a scroll rect component to that, and make whatever image, or in this case panel, a child of that scroll view. So content. This specifies exactly what is going to be scrollable, or what can be scrolled within this, sorry, yeah, within this scroll view. Wait, I need to resize this. Let's remove this, increase the size here, and now make it a child. We also need to specify, okay, we've already specified the content. Let's take a look at some of the other properties. Horizontal and vertical. This tells whether or not you can scroll it with the mouse by dragging the image. Let me show you what this means. You can actually drag it around, scroll it. If I disable horizontal, I cannot move it left and right, I can just move it up and down. Movement type. You have three options: unrestricted, elastic, and clamped. Let's see what happens in unrestricted. Okay, due to a slight bug, I think in the editor or some issue with my system, if I take this panel out of bounds of the scene, Unity is going to crash. So I'm just going to explain this to you by, well, I'm just going to talk. Well, you can drag this out of the bounds of the scroll rect if you have selected unrestricted. Elastic, however, will cause you to bring the thing back. You see this effect here? This is elastic. That will not happen in the case of unrestricted. Again, I cannot show you unrestricted because if I take it too much out of bounds of the scene, then Unity is going to crash. Do try it yourself though. I'm sure you'll be able to find it out. Next you have clamped. This is just, well, it's not elastic, it's clamped within the bounds of our scroll rect. Let's bring this here. Maybe now I can show it better. Oh, oops. Change this to... Okay, well, let me show you elastic over here. See this? Comes back. Okay, now clamped. And clamped, there's no elasticity, it just stops there. It goes to its limit and stops. Alright, next you have inertia. Let me change this to elastic. Well, you also have elasticity over here. This is, I don't think I need to explain it, but let's change this value a little bit and try to drag our panel a little more. Well, you can drag it and it takes more time to come back. Change this to 0.1 and it's back to its normal speed. Okay, next, inertia. Now you'll notice when I drag and let go of the panel, it's still moving. I have already let go of the panel, but it's still in motion. This is inertia, and you can actually control the deceleration rate. Like if you set this to 0, it was initially set to I think 137, I don't remember. So this is inertia. You can actually disable this as well and you'll have no inertia. Next, horizontal scroll bar and vertical scroll bar. This specifies which scroll bar in the UI is supposed to be used to scroll horizontally or vertically, if at all you intend on using a scroll bar. If you intend on just dragging it, just like I was doing just now, then you don't need a scroll bar. But if you do actually need a scroll bar, then you can specify it over here. We'll do that shortly. Alright, now we don't want this entire thing being shown over here because it looks really ugly. So what we need to do is add a UI mask. Before adding the mask, we need to add an image script because the UI mask has to use this image script in order to draw its mask. And as you can see, once you add the mask, you have, well, you have a mask and the entire panel has been masked. Only whatever portion is visible through the scroll rect is being shown. Let's play the game and see what happens. When I click and drag outside the scroll rect, nothing moves, but within the scroll rect I can control the entire panel. Now that we have a UI mask set up, we can add a scroll bar. I don't think I need to explain the values of, the properties of scroll bar either, because it's the same thing: interactable, transition, navigation, handle, direction, value, size and number of steps. I think I should explain this. I'll get to that, just a minute. Now let's go back to our scroll view and first of all disable these two so we cannot click and drag the panel anymore, and drag our scroll bar to horizontal scroll bar. As you can see, the value has already been adjusted based on where the panel is currently located or placed. Let's play the game and see the effect. As you can see, we are now able to scroll neatly through our list of characters using a scroll bar. Now the UI mask does not have to be in this shape. Like I said, image script is used by the UI mask. So if you set a certain shape, for example this, that shape is going to be used as your UI mask. Let's play the game and see. You can see it's not a rectangle anymore, it's this shape. Alright, size is the size of this scroll handle within the scroll bar. The value can go from 0 to 1. It can be anywhere between. In my case, it has already been set because I've set the scroll bar as a scroll bar for the scroll view. Number of steps. This is the number of steps that the scroll bar can actually take. If you want something smooth, you can set it to 0 or 1, but if you actually want it to go in steps, then you can set the number of steps. Let's see what happens if I set it to 6. You can see it's not scrolling smoothly, it's jumping. This can be useful as well, again, because you're selecting an item or you're viewing an item. So if you place the items accordingly, then you'll be able to get them to show up over here. Then you have on value changed. You can also, just like the slider, you can have some effect with this as well if required. Alright, so that concludes part 2 of the Unity 4.6 UI tools series. Unfortunately, I couldn't cover toggle in this, but I'll cover it in the next segment. Stay tuned for more. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Do check out these other videos as well. The video on the top left teaches you about layers and layer masking. The video on the top right teaches you about fixing object rotation, and the video on the bottom left teaches you how to use a wheel collider. I'm also accepting donations, so if you would like to help me out, you can send your donations to my PayPal email address, which is mentioned on the screen and in the description down below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.
Is he even still the same? Claiming Lord's boys, but we never seen him main. Out on cover, now on album when he get the chance to hang. Like, damn, 134. Niggas acting like I never been through them doors. Moved uptown and I rocked a little red. Niggas asking if I'm raw cause I'm out in Hempstead. Like, shit, who are you? Entourage member or